with Mark Jennings Bates. He is globally known for his adventure skills, eh, Mark?
A little bit. I've had a couple.
Not to mention he is a real advocate for charity work in the business. He and his wife, Jackie Jennings Bates, both have a wonderful charity called Rally for Life. You want to tell us a little bit about Rally for Life first, Mark?
Yeah, sure. That's a very important part of my life. That's really Jackie's vision to help people around the world. For a long time she wanted to help solve some problems, and we sat down several years ago now and just said, okay, how do we tackle this? And how do we tackle it in a fairly big way? We just didn't want it to be a small one-off event, and it's actually turned into the rest of our lives now. It really, Rally for Life owns us. It's great.
But it's funny that you said to tackle certain things. What type of things are you trying to tackle? Because we're talking on a global scale. So with Rally for Life, what you do is you tell us a little bit about where you go.
Yeah, for sure. Well, you know, the foundation for life, we believed, after a lot of discussion and research, was water.
Yes.
We looked at solving some other problems like AIDS. You know, there's so many AIDS orphans in Africa, and we thought, well, we could build some children's homes. And when you looked at building children's homes, then we realized, well, they're dying because they don't have water.
Yes.
So we thought, okay, let's tackle the first problem, which is getting these kids and adults water to stop them from dying. And they're dying at every 20 seconds. A child under 5 dies at the moment.
Well, you have to have a big heart to do what you're doing. So I guess this would lead us into, you have an event coming up, Mark. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I do. It's called The Accidental Journey, and maybe it's a mirror of what's happened in Jackie's and my life over the last little while, but really, if you look at our whole world, maybe we're all on an accidental journey of some sort. And so we've brought together a group of speakers to Kelowna on June the 19th at the Kelowna Community Theatre, who are going to talk about this subject, the accidental journey. And there's a few very interesting topics in there. We want to talk about the fact that really what happens in life is not very accidental. It happens for a reason. Sometimes we need to search for that reason and see what it is. And then the other important point I want to get across is that a lot of the times we think things are accidental, we think we're not getting the results that we want, but sometimes we just need to wind up our focus or our effort just 1% more. And it makes a massive difference. For an athlete, that's the difference between a podium and not getting on the podium.
Yeah.
Just 1% more effort. And so what would happen, would our lives transform if we just put in 1% more effort? And we're at a time in our economy where I think it behooves all of us to put in that little extra difference and kick it up a little bit more. And if you go back to another era, if you go back to the Second World War, the women of our world were credited with literally saving the world. I mean, they suddenly jumped into ammunition factories and they started working, and they let the guys go to war. I mean, that's not necessarily a good thing, but it's an example of what we can do if we just think, okay, we need to work hard, we need to do things differently. And so that's what we want to talk about, is doing things differently.
So how does somebody actually make that shift though? Because you know, you talk about the 1% and how important it is in your life, and you know, because you traveled around, you know exactly what that 1% can do. So how does somebody here in Canada, for instance, make that 1%? What is that 1%? Is that you know, donating an extra dollar, or is that contacting different organizations? What is that 1%?
It starts with a mental thought, and that's if you talk to an adventurer or an entrepreneur, a businessman, that effort at the end is really mental. It's hanging in. It's doing something that sometimes you don't believe you can do. Everybody's looking at you and saying, well, you could never do that. You couldn't finish on the podium. You couldn't be a world champion monster truck driver. You couldn't do those things. But you're just hanging on to that thought that I believe I can. And I think it's the same for everybody who maybe looks at their bank account and says, well, how do I give money to charity? I don't have any.
Yeah.
Well, it starts with a thought and the belief that you can make a difference. And literally, somebody called me from England yesterday and said, I'm going to ride my motorbike around the world. She's a young lady. She's going to ride a motorbike solo around the world. And she said, I want people to donate £2 to my cause, and £1.60 is going to go to your charity Rally for Life, and I'm going to use 40 pence to fund my trip.
Yeah. And
I thought, well, that's a fantastic thing. But she said, what does £1.60 do? What can I tell people £1.60 does? And £1.60 is about $2.30 maybe. And I said, Steph, that's water for a person.
That's a coffee at Timmy's every day.
Yeah, it's a coffee, a cup of tea, it's half a beer. But we're talking, for a child in Africa, we're talking about 8 years of safe water.
For $2.30.
For $2.30, 8 years of water. So when you're in that moment where you're sitting down, you're thinking, can I really make a difference? I have no money. you can literally go pick up some pop cans, to be honest, and take them back to the recycling depot, and you can get your £1.60 and you can give it to a charity, and it can make a huge difference in somebody else's life.
That'd be important. So with all these different adventures, Mark, I know that sometimes the question comes up, how do you fund the adventures? Because there's always the stigma about charities using money to go on adventures. So why don't you tell us how you fund all these adventures that you go on?
Yeah, I think the confusion is natural, because every time I do an adventure, I promote Rally for Life, and so I think people automatically assume that Rally for Life, the charity, pays for me to go on the adventures, and that would sure be nice if somebody paid for me to go on the adventures. Well, it wouldn't actually, because it would mean that people wouldn't get the money that needed it, and so we said we will not do that. We did discuss it many years ago. We said, okay, what if we raised $100,000 and used $5,000 to do the adventure? We said, no, that's not good enough. All of the money needs to go to charity. And so the way the adventures are funded is Jackie's and my money personally. Our savings, frankly, have been used to do the adventures. And then I have some very kind corporations that I work with as well that sponsor me, and we promote their products or services or their business. And so they're funded completely independent of the charity, but they always focus on raising money for the charity. So there's a benefit to the charity, not a negative at all.
So there you got it. How often do you give of yourself? That's a huge 1%. Why not join Mark for the Accidental Journey at the Kelowna Community Theatre on June 19th? And like we said, there's 2 sets of tickets that you can purchase. You can be there at 5:30 to meet all the VIPs for $40, or the doors open to all the regular ticket holders of $20 at 6:45.
Come and join us.
Yeah, for the Accidental Journey.